Yo, hello out there, internet. Welcome back to What Are We Watching? And as you can see, I'm not on a laptop anymore, which is fantastic. I now have my move is done. I have my desktop back. I've got an actual microphone that hopefully doesn't sound horrible. I've got a web camera. Um, I've got a web camera that when I busted it out, I apparently lost the connector, and I had to, of course, immediately getting back to New England, we're slammed with snow, and I had to brave the snowy roads to go get a cable for the camera so that I could do this today. And just a note to anyone out there dealing with snowy weather and snowy roads, unless you absolutely have to, just stay inside, because one of the worst feelings in the world is hitting those brakes and having the car not quite stop. That sucks. So, anywho, have not watched a ton this week. As obviously, you moving from state to state is tough and time consuming, and it's hard to fit stuff in. But I did fit some stuff in. I'm trying to keep item number one. I'm trying to keep on top of Night of the Seven Kingdoms, and I'm pretty sure the people making this show are determined to gross the audience out. At the top of every single episode, we had the diarrhea shot in episode one, and Sir Arlan's giant dong in episode two. And yeah, so these are decisions. These are decisions that were made, and yeah, I don't know about them, but if I was to gauge what the point of it is, what the point of these sort of gross out shots is, I think what they're trying to do is show that this is a show that has its tongue in cheek. You're allowed to laugh, and that this is not Game of Thrones and it's not House of the Dragon. We're not dealing with kings and wars and political machinations. It's about the common folk of Westeros, and they're just having some fun with it, not taking it too serious and not taking it too seriously. I just maybe would pick other venues for that. For the episode one, I don't particularly find poop funny, so that so like that happened, and it's just like, oh god, oh no, why? And you're sucked out of it pretty immediately. And right at the top of episode two, it's just you got Sir Arlan's dong flopping around, and it's just like, oh, okay, oh, all right, oh god, why? And it just sucks you out of the story. And particularly with that second episode, is what it did is essentially, I'm sitting there watching this episode, and it's just like, oh god, that can't be real. I don't believe that's real. Nobody has no one's is that big, and that would be horrible if it was. Who wants to be dragging that thing around? And I went from the show to, okay, let's Google this. Is this real? And of course it's not. It is a prosthetic. But I don't think you want your audience jumping immediately to Google to see if something is real. You want them focused in on the story, and that's really my problem with it. And I also my brain jumped immediately to Seinfeld. Actually, there's that great episode of Seinfeld where Jerry is dating this woman who walks around his apartment naked all the time, and when he's like, okay, maybe I'll do this too, and he's told immediately, put your clothes back on. And Elaine has this great line that the female body is a thing of beauty. The male body is so mechanical. And it is true that I would say, objectively, women just look better without clothes. Men look kind of gross. We're a gross looking group of people. What can I say? And I don't know if we're just trying to even things out in the nudity department over on HBO. But I don't know that, ladies, I don't know that that's really what you want. I think if you were to poll women, I think the plurality of women would agree that yes, women look better. Women look better naked. But would be curious to that had to have been some kind of makeup day. Getting there at 3 in the morning. Oh, I'm sure it's not quite that hardcore for the makeup, but I'm sure he was there probably 4 and 5 to have this giant penis attached to him to get that opening shot. Yeah, and like the question is, does it, like, do I think it works? And I'm gonna say yes and no. Yes, in that it definitely sets a tone. It tells the audience, yes, don't take this too seriously. You're allowed to laugh. We're not. This is not Game of Thrones. So on that level, it does work. It sets a tone. But on the other hand, it does rip me. I was ripped directly out of the narrative, just because it's it just doesn't work for me. I was ripped out of the story by something I find gross. At least two shots that I find relatively gross. So on that level, it didn't quite work for me. But I get the real question here is, does the show work so far? And I would say basically yes. I think they're making a smart choice by going shorter on this, given the tonal change. It's almost, again, it's closer to comedy than Game of Thrones was, and it's much smaller in scale. Essentially, it's a simple story about a poor man with dreams of being a knight. And he puts in hard work and sacrifice to try to get there. And it's sort of moving a little bit sort of at a slow pace, but it's doing good enough character work where Duncan is this, I would describe him as sort of a lovable idiot who's trying to push himself forward. And that's sort of it's nice story, nice messaging. And I like him as a character. I like Egg as a character. The dynamics between the two of them are really quite good. And what's kind of nice is seeing a character. Of course, Sir Arlan's his father figure of a character, and he's trying to honor his father figure by Arlan is obviously not a particularly good knight, but the point Dunk keeps making is that he did very much take care of me, and because of that, I would like to honor that, and that's sort of, I would say, nice messaging for a world, because the Westeros tends to be a little bit more of a dark, cynical world as far as fantasy goes. And this is it's nice to see something a little bit more traditional, and a little bit more scaled back. And I think that's probably gonna, if they can keep forwarding the story at a good pace, I think that's going to serve them well going forward. And hopefully they can shake off the stink of season 8 of Game of Thrones and the sort of weak tea season 2 of House of the Dragon. So the characters are good enough. I hope they land it. We'll see. I think 8 or 10 episodes. We've been down this road before with this universe, and I don't think we'll know till the end whether or not they manage to land the plane. But it's nice being back in this world I could use without some of the gross out shots. Those are not really working so well for me personally. But anywho, moving on, I'm working on doing my Oscar homework, and I was looking for something in the middle of this move, looking for something, a short movie to watch, and I jumped on Blue Moon, which Ethan Hawke is nominated for Best Actor for. and it's very good. It's very, very good. It's a character, I would say, a character drama for musical theater nerds. I'm a big fan. I'm a sucker for a good musical, so a lot of the little references in there worked really, really well for me. There's a lot of subtle little cameos from famous either writers or musicians that were sort of coming to fruition at that time, and it's sort of nice. It's like, oh, I think this is this person, or it's like, oh, this is this person. Like you got E.B. White and Little Steven, Sondheim. There was one George Hill who it's like, oh, this has got to be someone. Let's look him up, and it's the guy who directed Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. Now, I doubt essentially the film is about Ethan Hawke is playing Lorenz Hart, who is Rogers of the Rogers from Robert Rogers and Hammerstein. He was the original partner, and they eventually split ways, and Rogers became Rogers and Hammerstein, and Hart kind of fades away. And what the movie is really, it's very much a character piece about a lonely eccentric artist who feels left behind by his partner, and it's a beautiful performance by Ethan Hawke. The movie does not work without him. He essentially is the movie. Most of the dialogue and most of the screen time is his. It's obviously not it's as close to a one-man show as you can possibly get. And I'm kind of he definitely earned that nomination, and I'm kind of rooting for him. And he just plays hard as this sort of likable but also kind of judgy and annoying sort of eccentric, and with a bit of alcoholism thrown in. And it's sort of clear why the sort of people in his life sort of like walk away a little bit. He's kind of his own worst enemy, pushes a little too hard, and ends up paying for it in the end. And it's yeah, as an audience, I personally, from my perspective, I liked the guy, but also he's it's like, man, it's like this guy it'd be fun to hang around with for a little bit, but then he'd get really, really kind of irritating. What is this? Shoe cat. So it's really, really great performance. The other thing that this film does very well is have basically a debate about the arts. And you've got sort of this people like Rogers who loved sort of nostalgic art, where you've got sort of this happy endings and things are good and they're fluffy and nice. And Hart is more in the, he's like sort of the cynical guy. He likes everything to have an edge, and it's sort of this contrarian. If it's super duper popular, then there's got to be something kind of wrong with it, and it's somehow false. And there's a couple really good back and forths between him and Rogers about this topic. And Rogers makes the point of, there's a lot of people who love, it takes place on the night of the release of Oklahoma. It's like the audience loves this stuff, and particularly in hard times, nostalgic art is necessary. But I would say, like, if you know a lot of artists or filmmakers, you know a lot of them have that more sort of cynical edge, where there's a lot of them. It's like I want it to be edgy. I want it want it to sort of be a little bit cutting and biting, and that's where the real art is at. And the film makes I think a good argument for both cases. And it's asks that question of what is real art. And the other sort of another interesting element, the film is sort of unclear about whether this character it's definitely insinuated that he could be either gay or bi. The entire film he spends pining after Margaret Qualley. and it seems my read on it is it's not so much that he's into her in terms of in romantically. It's just she's a very beautiful woman, and he just like, whether it be in writing or art or in people, he just likes beautiful things and gravitates towards um towards those things. But I will say the best scene for me, and I think any dude can relate to this scene, is when she gives him the I like you but not in that way comparison, and Hawk's reaction and response to that is absolutely soul crushing. And if you've ever been on, and I'm sure most men have been on the other end of that conversation, it's just an absolute sort of gut punch of a scene. So if you're a fan of, my personal score on this one is 4 out of 5. It's definitely got Oscar bait vibes to it, but it's good. It's good Oscar bait. It's good Oscar bait. It's a good character study, and particularly if you are a fan of musical theater or live theater of any kind, it's going to have something in there for you. So I definitely recommend it. It's a sort of a brisk 90 minutes. In a world where things tend to go over long, this one does not overstay its welcome. And it kind of has a little bit of a vibe of it could be a stage play. Like, you could take this script, adapt it for the stage, and it would work just as well on the stage. So Linklater made another good film here, and it's worth I would say it's worth checking out. It's worth checking out for sure. And the cat's finally gonna let me keep going. So yes, Blue Moon, check it out. Very good movie, great performance. And I know Chalamet seems to be the favorite this year for Best Actor, but I still have yet to see Marty Supreme. I like Chalamet. I think he's a good actor, but he's also very, very young, and he's going to have lots of other opportunities to win this thing. And I don't know that winning a Best Actor young it doesn't necessarily work out so well. You can ask, I think, Brie Larson that question. Did not end up working out so well for her. It kind of seemed to go right to her head. And when something like that goes to your head, you can end up making some poor creative decisions, or just getting a little too big for your britches publicly. So right now I'm rooting for Ethan Hawke. I think the film doesn't work without him, and he's got a history of turning in great performances. So I would love to see him get it. I would love to see him get it this time. He's quite charming. All right. So moving on, the other movie I threw on for old time's sake this week is Air Force One. I was just sort of in the mood for some action. I wanted to get sort of a Die Hard on a thing. Wanted to stick on a Die Hard on a things genre, and Air Force One is definitely my personal favorite Die Hard on a thing movie. It's just an all-around good action film with sort of a mild patriotic twist, and with just a little bit of politics sprinkled in. And every time I turn this on, I just miss Jerry Goldsmith. That he was one of the greats in terms of film scores. I mean, whether it be Star Trek, Alien, Basic Instinct, he just had a really great way of encapsulating what a film is, and he 100% does that with this movie. He essentially writes America the score is what he does. And I get it. Whenever election years roll around, I'm always amused at, because inevitably it will show up on Republican conventions 100% of the time. If you're watching that, it's like, there it is. You couldn't like we knew you were going to fit it in there somewhere. And it's almost a little bit of a stereotype, I would say, at this point. If you're a Republican and you're at an event, you're probably going to dig up the Air Force One score at some point. But what is kind of interesting going, of course, it was, I believe, 1997. And it's interesting seeing some of the things that are dated at this point. It mostly does a good job of being general enough that you can watch it in any era. But there's definitely some 90s isms that you look back on and don't necessarily age. The one that really sort of caught me was the sort of rose-colored glasses that we were looking at Russia with at the time, because you start off and it's post Cold War. It's just like, oh, it's gonna be like us, and now we're gonna be good buddies. And you've got the president of Russia is depicted in the film as sort of this jovial, nice guy trying to fix his country, and we all kind of know that's not how it ended up going. Now that we're almost 30 years on from the release of this film, and it's like, well, there may be a little bit more led by Gary Oldman's character in this movie, and that's very sad. And I will say, like, the other thing that this movie does well that a lot of sort of politically tinged movies don't do so well anymore is it keeps it very nonpartisan. It's very sort of explicit. It's pretty explicit that the audience doesn't know what party the characters are from. We don't know, and it's in weird ways. There's smatterings of sort of both Republican and Democrat policy that are sort of looped in, and basically it just sort of boils down to just America good, terrorist bad, action on plane, which is from an entertainment perspective, is, I think, fine. I do have some questions about how world police interventionist Harrison Ford's character sort of he's pitching some pretty world police type stuff at the top of the movie, and I'm like, I don't know how I feel about that. That could, I don't know if that necessarily is going to work out. But anywho, the other sort of nice thing about it is whenever you cut back to the Situation Room with the vice president, and on the home front end of dealing with this this situation they find themselves in, you've got room full of people with a lot of opinions being sort of ideas and thoughts going back and forth, and I don't think any of the characters are treated as just straight up bad guys. Like, obviously, Dean Stockwell's character as the Secretary of Defense is sort of a little bit adversarial to Glenn Close's vice president, but the points he makes are largely well-founded points that I would say in a real world situation should be taken under consideration. And that's where smart writing comes in, where you have lots of ideas and and you try to lean yourself towards the best one. And I would argue that this time around watching it, that Harrison Ford, he actually at some point early in the film, Dean Stockwell says that 50 people, to keep the world from setting on fire, losing 50 people might, we should probably be able to live with that if it means not having global catastrophe. And on a smaller scale, the president on the plane kind of makes sort of that same type of decision when Gary Oldman whacks I don't think she's the press secretary, but he has a choice to either show up and save her or stay down in the cargo hold and keep trying to save the day. And, ultimately he sacrifices somebody in order to, keep the fight going. And it's really quite well acted, well cut sequence, and it still hits really, really well in 2025 as it did in 1997. So it's a very, very well cut film. It's very well cut, very, very tense. But it's like another couple. Again, it's like there's just little, just sort of retroactive things to notice when, just generally speaking, when for Hollywood, and if you're making anything with the president or the executive branch, when if a Democrat is president at the given moment, America is great. We're all happy, joy. It's log, it's big, it's heavy, it's wood. When a Republican is president, it's like everything is awful. It's just everything is horrifying. So it's just like that's as old as time. I don't think that's something that's ever going to change, but it's just it's sort of an eye roll, an eye roll, a little bit of an eye roll thing for me personally. And I also did get a kick out of, at some point, the news puts out a bullshit story that really sort of screws things up for the vice president, and the Newsnet, the network, of course, that put out the bullshit in order to be fast and not right was, of course, CNN. So the more things change, the more they stay exactly the same. Anywho, moving on from that, moving on from the political aspects of the film, I will say I think Harrison Ford is probably the ultimate male action actor. Like, he just hits all of the right notes, and so physically, it would be really hard to look like an Arnold or a Sly Stallone. But you probably, as an average guy, you could manage a looking like a Harrison Ford if you tried hard enough. And he's, I would say, tough, but he's got the tough guy persona, but he's also incredibly emotive. Like, if you go back to that scene where the press secretary is offed, his expression, like, he has no dialogue in that scene. Everything is just this raw emotion and just anger and frustration and what do I do, and just absolute sadness that this has just happened, and nobody quite sells that quite like Harrison Ford does. I think maybe Mel Gibson has really great facial tics and facial expressions as well. If you go look at The Patriot, some fantastic stuff. And the other thing that for this movie, I saw it when it came out, not in theaters, but we rented it, and it was probably the first film I ever saw with Glenn Close, first film I ever saw William H. Macy in, and they're all great supporting performances. Of course, you've got your really strong lead in Harrison Ford, but the movie really works because it's got a great supporting cast around them in every, again, it's like there are no small parts, only small actors, and everybody brought it. And like, one of my favorite moments in the film is when they're toward the beginning, when the plane is getting taken over and the pilots are trying to land it. The guy who plays the pilot, not a named character, but he delivers some really, really intense, great lines. And that's, again, really building a small part, but really, this actor really, really made something with the little amount of screen time that he had. So definitely, it's still a 4 out of 5 movie for me. I don't quite have it in me to graduate it to 5 stars. It doesn't quite have the quality that Die Hard does. Die Hard is a perfect film. You can poke holes. There are holes you can poke in the plot of Air Force One if you really do try. Yeah, and and I don't want to. Just before I move on from Air Force One, I don't want to undersell how great Glenn Close is in this movie. It was 1997. She's playing a female president, and she's extremely strong, extremely tough, and um, it was the whole concept was when people when you have sort of, I would say, people on the left who say no, we could never handle a female president or a female vice president. I don't believe that. Um, like, because back in the 90s you have, say, this movie where it never felt weird. By like that there is no point where I felt like, oh, this would never happen. And again, I a lot of that fantastic performance from Glenn Close. So go back if you need some action. Go back and rewatch Air Force One. It basically holds up minus some minus some old 90s isms. And I honestly, I've always been curious as if I don't know if there any new Air Force Ones have been built since that movie came out, but I'm genuinely would be curious if um anyone in the government looked at that movie and said, oh, like, here's some like sciencey, here's some some things that we can add to the plane. This'll like, I like that idea, let's do it. And sort of Star Trek type pulling from fiction. I somehow doubt they have an escape pod now, but it would be awfully cool if they saw this movie and threw one in. But in any case, moving on, I'm gonna close out today with our Trek Tuesday. I'm 4 episodes into the original series, so this is the fourth one that aired, The Naked Time. And I would say this is where the show starts cementing into the crew dynamic the classic crew dynamic that we really all know and love. Essentially, the Enterprise crew is presented with a problem. A pathogen is brought up from a planet. It killed all of the science crew down below. It's brought up to the Enterprise, and it makes everybody start acting, drunk and crazy. And the crew has to deal. They have to deal with that, solve that problem, and because of it, it's sort of this landslide of a litany of problems that they then have to solve. And you've got the crew dynamic. Kirk obviously, he's on the bridge, but also there's stuff that needs to get managed outside the bridge. So that's where Spock comes in. He's walking around, hitting things here and there and everywhere, and trying to manage the rest of the ship. McCoy is working on the antidote. This is the first real time we've had Scotty has had a real presence in the show to this point, and he's we understand him as the engineer, and he's solving engineering problems, even if in this one it's just a simple one as opening up a door. So it's the first time we solidly get Scotty. Sulu in this one is kind of used as he's essentially there as a demonstration of the problem they're dealing with. This is sort of the famous, famous shot of him fencing through the hallways of the Enterprise, and that's sort of his purpose here. And then you've got Uhura trying to get comms up and running again. And this is where I think old Trek does something so much better than new Trek in just the professionalism they show. This is a ship run with a naval structure. There is decorum. There are ways that you treat people in your crew, and that is nothing but professional. And there's a really fantastic scene in this episode that demonstrates that, I think, perfectly. So you've got your drunk rando Irish guy who's locked himself into engineering. And all the while this is going on, the ship is getting ready to sort of crash into the atmosphere. So they need to get into the engine room because there's a ticking clock, and this drunk Irishman is projecting. He's singing over the comms, and everyone is getting it, so everyone is stressing out. And at some point, Kirk kind of he snaps a little bit about to her about it's like, why, it's like, is there nothing you can do to get this, can you please shut it off? And she snaps back at him like, if I could, you don't think I'd do that? So she snaps at the captain and then really immediately, instantly sort of walks it back and apologizes. And it's sort of that there are ways you communicate, and that was not professional. I'm sorry. To which he responds back an apology in kind that he also kind of shouldn't have snapped at her. And it's like, yes, I trust your professionalism. There's a reason you're here. And I didn't mean to lose my cool. So it's that type of seriousness that Star Trek used to have that it just doesn't seem to have anymore. And also just on other end in terms of chain of command is and I kind of love this. It's a great little bit between Scotty and Spock where Scotty's trying to get through the door and he's having to cut through it, and of course you got all sorts of wires and crap back there, and you don't want to, you hit the wrong thing and you could set something off and seriously damage the ship. And Scotty talks about having the safety factor. And he's taking his time to have a safety factor, and that's part of his protocol. That is part of his professionalism. But there are times where we have a ticking clock, and it's like you don't have, and Spock has to tell him you don't have time for the safety factor. So there is at some point it's sort of an issue with command. At some point, Spock's asking him to skip a step because it's like either way, if we don't get this done now, the ship is kaput anyway. So just forgo this and that, and just get us through the door. And those are the little moments that made that show so great. Those little character moments. So you get all of those dynamics in this episode, and this episode also sets up some pretty important character dynamics going forward, because ultimately this pathogen going around, both Spock and Kirk get it, and Spock is maybe a little bit more resistant to it, but not completely. And you start to see that he is not actually an emotionless being. He does feel things. It's just in his culture, it's frowned upon, and it's seen as very important to logic first. And you got this really, Nimoy is spectacular, and there's this really great one shot, long shot loop around of him as he's trying to really just keep his shit together, and it's beautifully shot, beautifully acted, and you're starting to get more of a sense of who this character really is. And it's sort of the same thing with Kirk. We kind of really learn that that the Enterprise, the Enterprise is his lady, and part of that is he's got for all the reputation that he has as being a horn dog, he does look at the women in his command professionally. He makes a he makes a comment that it's like, oh, this like Yeoman Rand is kind of cute, but it's like, I'm the captain, I must be professional. So he does see a distance between, it would be as the man in charge, it would be inappropriate for me to be hitting on my underlings. And he sort of has this sort of inner conflict of is a relationship even in the cards for me? But even if it's not, I still I have my ship. And so that's all important character work going forward. So it's, again, they get to the show hits its stride pretty quickly. I think the previous episode, which was the Where No Man Has Gone Before, which was the second pilot, it's had a little bit of rough edges, but they iron out the rough edges really quite fast. And the other interesting thing is this ends with they set up time warp at the end of it. And it's been a few years since I've watched through the show, but as far as I remember, they don't ever use time warp they don't ever use time warp the same way they did. They set up something that they don't ever use again really in the future. Because as far as I recall, whenever they go back in time, it's sort of a uh, and they're in the ship, it's a slingshot around the sun at warp 10, and that sends them back in time. In this one, they sort of cold start the engine, and that manages to shoot them back. And I don't, as I recall, that is not a functionality that they ever revisit in the show. So that's kind of interesting in that to set up something that in theory you're going to use going forward, that apparently maybe they decided, I don't know that we want to use this again. And also another cool thing, you got the dangers of space exploration. They go down to a planet. There's everyone on the planet is dead. Maybe don't take off your protective gloves and rub your nose. Maybe don't do it. Maybe you went down there wearing the whole orange chute thing for a reason. But it's exploration is a dangerous business, and that's sort of the theme here. So it's great, really, really good episode. Love it. Definitely check it out. Anywho, that I think is gonna wrap things up for me. I think today. That's everything that I've watched. If there's something you've watched that you think I should check out, drop it in the comments, and I will give it a shot. And be sure to like, share, subscribe, and do all that nice stuff. And hopefully next time I'm not going to have this J.J. Abrams lens flare splitting my face in two the next time. But I have not worked out the lighting here yet. This whole venture is a work in progress, and it's a work in progress, and we'll get there. I do have a couple comments from Facebook. Hey, John, thoughts on Kate Hudson's performance and subsequent nomination for Song Sung Blue? I have not seen Song Sung Blue yet. I really want to. Again, I'm a sucker for musicals. And Hugh Jackman is very, very charming. So that is on my list to see. I will say I am looking at the trailer. I'm surprised that it has an Oscar nomination. It doesn't seem to have Oscar-y vibes to me, but I am going to check it out, and I hope I hope it's as fun as the trailers made it look. So anyway, like, share, and subscribe. Join me next Sunday, same bat time, same bat channel, and I will watch go watch some fun stuff. Chill out. Watch something fun.